Hey guys, coming to you with an update to a story that I had posted about a pretty macabre discovery at the Mutter Museum in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. When I did the original story, I left out, names and dates and all that kind of stuff because the story itself, when it happened, it was a pretty big story. But I didn't know how this was going to end, so I left out that stuff. Today we found out how it ended, and it's pretty sad. So I'm going to to give some reverence to these children that lost their lives, I'm going to tell their story. In 1980, a woman by the name of Stella Williamson in Galveston, Pennsylvania, died. Upon her death, the authorities received a letter directing them to go to her home, into her attic, and seek out a specific trunk. Upon doing so, the local authorities found the bodies of 5 deceased babies. The babies were sent to Philadelphia to a forensic anthropologist, and they were determined to all be newborns of varying age, but relatively still in the newborn age range. 3 of the babies, it was determined that their means of death was homicide. The other 2 were undetermined. One of the babies still had a ligature around its neck. Since Stella was at this point gone and can't be prosecuted, the decision was made that these 5 children would be interred in a cemetery in Cambria Township, that in basically Evansburg, Pennsylvania, in a cemetery that law enforcement uses for unclaimed remains. They were buried all together in a pine box. At the time, it was when the examination was done on the bodies, the children were born between the range of the 1920s to 1930s. So Stella died in 1980, and these were children born to her between 1920 and 1930. So when they were found, they would have been at the age of 60 to, about 60 years old, 70 years old. 50 to 60 years old, if they had lived. Now, spring forward to present day. In December of 2024, the coroner in Pennsylvania received a call from the Mutter Museum. Going through their archives, they had found the skulls of 2 newborn infants. One with a ligature. Not, knowing quite what to do with these items, they contacted the coroner, and thank goodness the Mutter Museum is very meticulous in their record keeping. They knew exactly who had donated them. They knew exactly when and where from and all that. So when the coroner went and retrieved the skulls from the Mutter Museum, it was basically found out that the forensic anthropologist that had done all of the work on the infants' bodies when they were found in 1980 had apparently kept 2 of their skulls. And then in the early 90s, he decided to donate them to the Mutter Museum. Now, this forensic anthropologist has since passed away. So what the coroner decided would be the best thing to do would be to go to the, what a lot of us call a potter's field. Have you ever heard that term? It's, where, unclaimed remains are usually buried. And they went to the area where the burial was supposed to have been in the field. And upon, it's like I said in the other video, they got this information in December of 2024. They, at that time, had several bodies that were unclaimed that they needed to inter there anyway. So they made the decision back in December that they would wait till after the winter was done so that it would be easier and do it in the summertime. And so flash forward to now. So that was kind of where I left off my other video. Unfortunately, it has been, they went over there, did everything they could to find this burial. And they found nothing. Unfortunately, they found nothing. So now at this point, there are records kept, even in potter's fields. I'm sorry if you hear sirens. I'm outside. Unfortunately, even with potter's fields, they keep, very meticulous records as far as where they bury remains. Most of the time, they are John Does and have an identification number or something like that. So they had pretty good information as to where. I'm sorry. I live in a small town. Hardly ever any sirens until I come outside to do this. Okay, back to my story. So they knew, they had a pretty good idea, where this burial should be. They even obtained a backhoe driver that works with one of the universities in doing exhumations, Indian burial excavations, and things of that nature. So he in other words, he knows what he's doing. They had him. They had another anthropologist out there. They had a whole crew. They dug 5 feet out in every direction from where the burial was supposed to be, and they found nothing. They did not find any remains of a pine box that was supposed to be there. Even if the pine box had rotted with time, you would still have bones. No bones whatsoever. No other remains of the other children. So, unfortunately, these children, they reburied the remains that they had. They buried them in that area with a marking and stated that they will be coming back to do a proper ceremony for the children. But that's just sad, because some creepy lady back during the 20s and the 30s, apparently she liked being pregnant maybe, but just didn't like having to take care of the children, that's all I can get from that. And 5 of them. But what's even creepier about it is that the person that they were entrusted to, once they were finally found, they were entrusted to a forensic anthropologist to determine their age, if they could determine any genders, how they died, all of that. And that person, the very person that they were entrusted to for that, and to make sure that they were interred properly, is the one that betrayed them as well. And that's just really sad. That's really, really sad. And like I said, this particular anthropologist he's passed on now, so he can face no charges either. But what's even worse is that now we have no idea what he did with the remaining infants or the remaining remains of the 2 infants that he donated the skulls to the Mother Museum. And that's just really sad. That is, that's almost such a psychotic thing almost to me. Back in 1980, when all of this went down, it was called the Williamson Baby Murders. It was a big story. But, yep, unfortunately, they basically said that all they found was bricks, pieces of bricks, sewage pipes, and dirt. So hopefully, soon they will be back out to do a proper service at least for the 2, skulls that they do have for these babies. But like I said, the biggest part now is that we have no idea what this crazy anthropologist did with the rest of these children. And that was just really sad. So, yeah, I just wanted to, with an ending like that, I felt that the very least that I could do would be to tell their story, because their story got told, part of their story was told in 1980. But unfortunately for these children, they were betrayed again. And so their story now will never have a final ending. So anyway, rest in peace to the Williamson babies. I'm assuming they would have the same last name as her, Williamson. Her name was Stella Williamson. So yeah, rest in peace, Williamson babies. You deserved much, much better than that from your mother, and you deserved much, much better than that from those that were in a much higher position to make sure that you were taken care of afterwards too. All right, guys. Y'all have a good night. Have fun, be safe, and always, always, always know that you're loved. Love you guys. Bye.